everyone, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my most recent book haul, and this includes the books that I picked up in Chicago. Are there more books than there should be? Probably. But I went on a little bit of a book buying spree just before I went, and then obviously whilst I was in Chicago I went book shopping with Julie, Molly and Katie, which just had to be done. And then when I landed, James took me to Waterstones, which I think was a sign that he had really missed me whilst I was away, so I picked up a couple of books there. So let's just jump straight into it. I'm kind of surrounded by the books, so I will keep the Chicago books separate and I will put those last, but for the rest they are in no particular order whatsoever. The first book that I have to show you is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is a very well known and much loved book on BookTube. It's been doing the rounds for quite a long time, but I have been waiting very patiently for it to come out in paperback before I picked it up. This is a sci-fi book about a guy who, I'm not sure if he gets into an accident. Yes, he gets knocked unconscious, and then when he wakes up, his life as he knows it is not the same. So his wife is not his wife, his son is not his son. And the thing that I have heard and that intrigues me the most is that the sciencey element in this book is very, very accessible. So it's kind of an entry-level sci-fi book, which I'm really curious about. And as you can see, somebody has already started reading this. James is currently reading it, and as far as I know, is enjoying it. So this is one that I'm definitely looking forward to picking up very soon. The next book I have is The Couple Next Door by Shari Lapina. This is a very new psychological thriller that I actually found in the charity shop. So I paid 99p for it, but it looks as though it has never been read. So this is about a couple who are invited to their next door neighbours, but they say they don't want them to bring their 6-month-old daughter with them, so they decide to take the baby monitor and leave the baby at home because obviously they're just next door. And when they return, surprise surprise, the baby is gone. And I have seen quite a few people not talking about this but sharing pictures of it on Instagram and saying that it's really good. So I don't know much more about it than that, which I think is probably the best thing with this type of thriller book. But again, this is one that I was keen to pick up, so at some point I will get around to reading it. Then we have Eon by Alison Goodman, which is a book that I mentioned in my What I'm Taking to Chicago video, which I will link up here and in the description box down below. I didn't get round to reading it whilst I was in Chicago, but it's still one which is very high up on my list. This is a YA fantasy which features dragons, and that is literally all I know, and I'm quite happy with that level of information. I remember seeing somebody talk about it not too long ago and really rave about it, so yeah, I don't know much more about it, but I'm quite happy to go into it fairly blind. Then we have Letters to the Lost by Bridget Camara. I'm sorry, I probably butchered that name. This is a YA book about a young girl who loses her mother at an early age, and for as long as she can remember, she has written letters to her mother and left them on her grave. And then suddenly she starts receiving replies, and it turns out that the person who is replying is not so far removed from her life as you might have thought. Again, I saw this and I read the back and I thought that it sounded quite interesting. I'm a bit about YA books like this because I don't usually read them. I find them quite angsty, but I feel as though I know somebody who read this recently and my mind is just all over the place. I'm afraid that is the effects of jet lag. But yeah, I feel like I saw somebody talk about this just recently and say that they quite enjoyed it, so I'm hoping that it's not going to be too angsty, and it's going to have the elements of young adult books that I really enjoy, but we can only see. Next up we have The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid, and this is a book which is not new to BookTube, and I saw it quite a while ago and it really piqued my interest. So basically this is a fantasy world where everybody has a diabolic, so that's kind of a replica of who they are, and their job is to protect the person that they look like. And so in this particular story, the diabolic, the only way that they can protect the person that they have been created to replicate is by becoming that person. And I just think that it sounds so different and so interesting, and I haven't really heard that many people talk about it. But it says on the front, the diabolic with a heroine as deadly as Katniss and Selena. Now you know how I feel about Selena Sardothian, but I am prepared to give this a go. And yeah, as I said, I just think that the concept sounds really interesting, and I'm really intrigued about where it's gonna go. Next up we have Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch, and again this is a YA book, and this is about a young girl whose mother gives her her journal on her deathbed, or after she's died basically, and encourages her to go and find out about her father. So she travels to Tuscany and there uncovers more than just the story of who she is. And as you may know, I recently went to Tuscany. It's one of my favorite places, and I'm really excited to read this. I feel like it's kind of past the season for it now, because we are very much into autumn, and this is probably more of a summer read, but I think that it's going to be really quick and easy, and probably just one of those brilliant books to pick up when you need something a little bit fast, and that you don't have to concentrate on too much. Okay, moving on, here are two books that I ordered whilst I was in Chicago. So the first one is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I have been on the lookout for a beautiful cover of The Handmaid's Tale for what feels like the longest time, and I spotted this on Amazon and just knew that it was the cover for me. And I have never ever read The Handmaid's Tale. It's on my list of books that I wanted to read in 2017, hence why I've been on the lookout for a good copy of it. So when I saw this, I knew that I wanted to get hold of it, and I know that this book is a little bit like Marmite for some people. People either love it or they completely hate it, so I am on that basis alone interested to see what I think about it. Then we have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Again, this is a book which has been on my radar for a very long time, and whilst I was in Chicago I noticed that it was just £2 on Amazon in the UK. So if this is a book that you have been looking out for, it is still reduced to £2 on Amazon, and I will put my affiliate link in the description box down below if you want to go and check that out. But this is a fantasy, and it literally just says on the back, "This is the way the world ends for the last time." Is that not the most intriguing premise ever? And on top of that, I recently heard Julie from A Girl in a Book talk about it, and she said that although it's very confusing, it's also incredibly interesting and well worth sticking with. So I'm so intrigued to read that. And again, it says on the front, the fifth season, every age must come to an end. So I'm very excited to read it. I have no idea when I'm going to get to it, but at some point I will, and at £2 it was just too good to pass up on. Then, as I mentioned, when I landed back from Chicago, James took me to Waterstones and I did a buy one get one free offer. So the first book that I picked up was Hagseed by Margaret Atwood, and I'm kind of taking a risk with this one and assuming that I'm going to enjoy her style of writing in Handmaid's Tale, plus the fact that I know very little about this other than it's a book about revenge. But I just thought that I would give it a go, and that cover is just gorgeous. I'm just really loving the Margaret Atwood vintage covers at the moment. So yeah, I really know very little about it, and it seems like such a risk to take, because if I hate The Handmaid's Tale, then I have a book here that I'm really not going to enjoy very much. But I was willing to take a risk based on this beautiful cover, and we shall see how I feel about it. And then, talking about beautiful covers, I saw this book and I didn't realise who had written it at first. I was just drawn in by the cover, and then I realised who the author was and just had to have it. And that is The Good People by Hannah Kent. And let's just, I mean, I know I haven't managed to get the sticker off yet, but let's just talk about that cover. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I love everything about it, and on top of that, you may recognise the name of the author. Hannah Kent is the writer of Burial Rites, which I read last year and really enjoyed, and I had no idea that she had another book coming out, but I am so excited to read this one. And as with Burial Rites, that was set in Iceland, and this one is set in rural Ireland in 1825, and it says on the back, 3 women gather to save a child. And yeah, I'm just really excited to read it. I don't even really want to know what it's about. I don't want to hear anything, because I knew very little about Burial Rites going in, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thought that it was so beautifully written, and I'm just really hoping that this book also lives up to my expectations. And if it doesn't, the cover is gorgeous, so who cares? Okay, now onto the books that I got in Chicago. So I had a particular type of book that I was looking for when I went out there, and I wasn't just looking to buy books, I wanted to get hold of books that were more difficult to find in the UK. So that was kind of what I was on the lookout for, both brand new and in the used bookstores that we went to. And I will have a vlog of my time in Chicago going up in the next couple of weeks, so do look out for that. But the first book that I bought when I was out there was A Fatal Grace by Louise Penny. Now Louise Penny writes a series of books, they're kind of cozy murder mystery books about a detective called Inspector Armand Gamache set in Canada, and these books are so difficult to get hold of in the UK. I read the first book, A Still Life, last year and I really enjoyed it, but it has proven near impossible to get hold of A Fatal Grace. So I knew that they were available in the US, so I decided to pick this one up. So again, this is set in the same Canadian village, Three Pines. It follows Inspector Armand Gamache, and of course there is another murder. So I'm really looking forward to this. A Still Life was just such a interesting and sweet and well written story that I thoroughly enjoyed reading in the winter time, and so I'm going to save this one for that same time period, and I just can't wait to get back into the world. The only downside is that once I've read this one, there are quite a few more books, and I'm fairly certain that they're going to prove as difficult to get a hold of as this one, but I couldn't bring them all back, so I just had to settle for the second book. And then Katie from Life Between Words, whose channel I will link down below, very kindly gave me a copy of Peace Like a River by Leif Enger, and this is a book that she has talked about pretty much non-stop on her channel. She really rates this book, and again, it's one that I've been looking out for here in the UK and just haven't managed to find a copy of. And she just absolutely adores this book. And as far as I know, it's about a family taking a journey, and it covers all kinds of different topics like family life, love, faith, coming of age, and just all those kinds of things. And I'm very excited to read this because we have incredibly similar reading tastes, and I feel like if she has loved this book, then I'm also going to love this book. So hopefully I'm going to be picking this up really soon. Next up we have Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, and I'm actually quite annoyed with myself because we went to a used bookstore and I found a perfect condition of Bringing Up the Bodies, but they didn't have a copy of the first one, so I put it back, and then we went into another used bookstore and I found this one, and I didn't have time to go back and get Bringing Up the Bodies, but what can you do? I probably couldn't have brought that many books back anyway. But this is book one of the Thomas Cromwell trilogy, which is set in the 1520s, obviously around the time of King Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell and the court and the intrigue. But the thing that I've heard the most about this book is that it's much darker than your average historical fiction, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I like reading books set around this time. In particular, the Shardlake books by C.J. Sansom are set at a very similar time, and I really enjoyed those, and they also have a slightly darker side to them. So when I heard about this series of books, I knew that I really wanted to pick them up. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to picking this chunk of a book up at some point in the near future. It was quite funny actually, because in the very last used bookstore that we went in, I got the copy of Wolf Hall, which Katie found for me, and then I didn't actually pick up any books for myself. I was basically given all of the books that I bought, and so the other book that I was given in that particular bookshop was A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray, which Molly handed to me because this is a series of books that Molly has been reading and has really enjoyed, and they're an alternative historical fiction book in that they follow, or they have a supernatural element to them. And apart from hearing Molly talk about them and really rave about them, I don't know much about the actual story itself. I know that it's about a 16-year-old girl who is sent to a boarding school, and she begins to have visions, and her story kind of unfolds from there. And I just think that it's a really intriguing premise, and I know that Molly has really enjoyed these books, and I think that she picked up the next one in the series whilst we were there. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading them. As I said, I think it's an interesting premise. I've never read anything like this before. I'm not really familiar with books with supernatural elements to them either. So yeah, I'm interested to see how I find this. And then the final book that I picked up is again one that is almost impossible to find here in the UK unless you're willing to pay about £15 for it, and that is Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. And this is based on a true story about 3 women whose lives collide during the Second World War, and they are from very different stations in life. So you have a socialite, you have a young female doctor who ends up working for the Nazis, and you have a Polish teenager. And it says on the front, should appeal strongly to readers of Kristen Hanna's The Nightingale and Anthony Doerr's All the Light We Cannot See, which, as you may know, were 2 of my favourite books of last year. So on that basis alone, I really feel like this is a book that I am absolutely going to fall in love with. So there you go, they are the books I have picked up just recently. I think that that is probably going to be it for the next couple of months. With Christmas not too far away, oh my word, I'm probably just going to put a pause on buying any books and wait until the festive season. But as always, who knows what's going to happen. If I see a good bargain or if there's a book that I desperately want to read, then I probably will end up buying it anyway, because I'm no good at book buying plans. But as always, thank you very much for watching. If you have liked and enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will see you all soon.